Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for 1 bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Kirk Your Enthusiasm. Today, I am joined by my longtime friend, Dan Marang. You probably don't know him because you're a Dallas fan, but I do because he has covered the Portland Trailblazers in a whole host of different ways. I met him when he was a fellow SB Nation employee, but now he is a Monday through Friday radio show host up at 1080 The Fan, the Danny and Dusty show. He also does a YouTube channel.
Right.
You do lots of like that's the problem with some of you people who do like all sorts of shit is like I go through the list and there's just all sorts of stuff.
Like, oh my God.
How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Got the radio gig like 2 months ago, and it's like just grinding, for a decade and seeing that kind of come together. It's been fun.
Have you gotten in any trouble? Because 3 hours is a long time to talk. 15 hours a week.
No, here's the crazy thing. We're actually moving studios right now. We had a bunch of technical issues, and we actually weren't in delay today. And our bosses came in and we were like, for those that don't know, if you're not in delay, you can't have a dump button, which means you can't drop any profanity. And the difference is I worked on TV for years, on cable TV, where if you dropped an F-bomb, it was like, well, no big deal. You do it now and you can get a massive, massive fine. So
yes.
The pucker factor was high today, but I made it through.
This is why I can't do radio, motherfuckers.
Here's the thing, man. Like I'm more foul mouth than you are, but like when the lights and the cameras come on, the mics flip on, like you just change. Like you just I can't explain it. You just do. But yeah, then you get off air and you're like, hey, fuck this. You're totally fine. It's something you can't really like square with any kind of like rational being.
Sure. Dudes who do that, like you're doing this for a living, Jeff Skinwade, who's one of the Dallas color commentators. He actually has a radio show too. All these people do radio. I'm like, I don't think I'd be very bad at radio. But anyways.
Gavin Dawson's from up here.
Yes. Well, tell me, first thing I need to know. So everyone that's listening knows that Portland was very bad last year. Very bad because
one of their final 23 because they won.
Right. Really a remarkable. Like it's going to be one of those basketball reference seasons, like 5 years from now, where you're like, who are these guys? So it's like, so let me see here. So, your Dame Lillard was hurt, basically got surgery on a abdomen based issue
/ groin. Yep.
Yeah. That was something that was a thing that he had probably needed to have worked on for like 2+ seasons and just finally had it happen. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah. It's been something it has quite literally been bothering him for years.
So did Yusuf Nurkic get hurt? Am I making that up?
No, Nurk had plantar fascia that was conveniently right around the time that they shut everybody else down.
That stuff hurts, and he's huge, though. Yeah. He looks really good. I saw a couple clips of him over there in either a World Cup qualifier or a friendly getting ready for Euro Cup.
Yeah,
he
EuroBasket.
looked real good. And then let's see here, who else? Like it was a struggle bus of a season.
Norm got traded, Cove got traded, CJ got traded, like everybody got shipped out. And then,
give me full names because in case our roster.
Oh yeah, there you go. So you got Norman Powell who got traded, you got Robert Covington who got traded, both to the Clippers. The Blazers got back Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, and
that felt like highway robbery.
They, from what I have been told, there were not askers.
Sure. No, because Covington feels like a guy who, if he came to the Mavericks, he'd be expected to do too much. But if with the Clippers, he's like their sixth wing because they're just a monster.
They're loaded, and
so he'll be fine.
And Norm had a fifth year, so it was a lot of money.
Yeah, Norman Powell is one of those guys that Mavs fans thirsted after, and then he re-signed for a ton of money, and it's like, ooh. Becomes kind of one of those, like a poison pill contract.
I'll give you something. The Mavs offered up THJ in a sign and trade for Norman Powell.
Interesting.
So that happened this last offseason. So that happens, and then about 10 days later, CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and the legend Tony Snell are traded to the Pelicans for Josh Hart, guys that they don't end up caring about as salary ballast, the 2025 Milwaukee pick. And really that was kind of the reset time. They shut Damian Lillard down entirely after the surgery. Nurk ended up playing 2 weeks into January, 3 weeks into January. They turned the ball over to Anthony Simons. He has the best month of his career. He's so good that they have to shut him down. I believe the month of January into February averaged 30 and 7 on basically 50, 40, 90 splits. It just pure insanity. They win 4 games, the final 4 games before the All-Star break, and then after the All-Star break, everybody's shut down. They shut down Josh Hart. They shut down Justice Winslow. They shut down Nurkic. They shut down Anthony Simons. And it is a Charles Barkley level hell of who he played for.
Yeah. How did you end up with Joe Ingles? Ingles. What's wrong
Ingles,
with me?
Ingles gets redirected to Portland as part of a salary dump.
Interesting.
So there was a desire by Portland to have him rehab. Like they brought him up here and kind of got him ingratiated in the culture. And there was a world where Joe would rehab until about December of this year if he had re-signed in Portland and then be a part of what they wanted to do here. They are very much looking for guys like that, his mentality. Sure. The Bucks came calling. He took less money because the Blazers actually had his bird rights, weirdly enough.
Right, but a 34-year-old ACL tear with a guy whose game is not like Ingles is really good, but he could also age like a banana on a counter.
Oh yeah, he could be cooked.
Yeah,
the Blazers were basically, if they were going to keep him, they were looking to sign him for $10 million and then flip him as an asset to a contender at the deadline. That was kind of the way it was being floated. But so they get through the season. They lose 21 of their final 23. They look at their team. They bring back Anthony Simons. He's at $25 million a year. They bring back Yusuf Nurkic at $18 million a year. Both those deals, from what I've been told, Anthony was always getting over $20 million. Jalen Brunson's deal actually kind of forced their hand, and the Blazers were kind of happy to give it to him because
he's young enough though. How old is he?
Yeah, he's 20. He just turned 23.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you don't care.
His prime year right now, he's going to be making $27 million when the cap's $200 million. Yeah,
that's fine.
They're fine.
That. Yeah.
The Nurk deal kind of made me squint, but I've kind of been told that there were talks around an extension around under $70 million, and that was just a non-starter for Clutch.
Sure.
And so they had to guarantee the 4th year to get him to come back because the big market, as weird as it was, Portland just didn't have the money in liquid assets, so they just had to re-sign Nurk. They end up using their MLE money. They chased some bigs. They went for the best player available for them, and that was GP2, Gary Payton II. They got him for a little bit more than the tax line MLE. And then they trade that 2025 first-round pick straight across for Jeremy Grant, who fit directly, coincidentally enough, into the trade exception created by CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell going out. So I believe it was in the $100,000 window, the leeway window, in order to sneak Jeremy Grant in there. So the Blazers completely overhaul their roster. They get their books much better because really they had some bad money in CJ McCollum. They had some bad money in Norman Powell. They gave up too much draft capital to get Robert Covington. As much as they liked Larry Nance Jr., I think they were leaning more towards, listen, we're turning CJ McCollum and Larry Nance Jr. into Josh Hart, Jeremy Grant, and the number 7 overall pick.
Yeah,
because
and
you can't tank without that.
Nance, like the thing about Nance that no one talks about is like if this were 2K, he'd be ideal, but in real life he gets hurt all the time.
Yeah, you can really only count about 55 games.
Whereas Josh Hart is kind of a
he's a tank.
I don't even know what he's a 6'5", 220-pound tank. Like he's gonna get you a lot of rebounds.
He's the best rebounding guard in the NBA.
Yeah,
like,
and his ability to put the ball in the basket, I think, waxes and wanes. But I mean, who cares? Because that's not really his role on an offense. No. And then in the draft, let's talk. We kind of skipped over the draft, but I think the draft.
I was going to circle to that. Yeah.
Okay.
It was kind of so leading up to not even leading up to the draft in March. I got word the Blazers were chasing OG Anunoby. That Clutch kind of doesn't want OG in Toronto because he's being knocked down the pecking order, and they really don't want a guy who's really, I mean, in OG, he's looking for a bigger contract at the end of this next contract because he did sign a very team-friendly deal. And when you're behind Scotty, behind Pascal, it's not a great place to be for a contract standpoint. Great place to be if you're talking about winning, certainly. And Dame and OG are very close, and they tried to work a deal out. And Masai stood firm, and I've been told that the ask on draft night was the number 7 overall pick, Josh Hart, Nasir Little, and another first. And the Trailblazers front office is like, no. And if you ask around the league, I think a lot of people thought that the number 7 pick alone was probably worth about OG.
OG's a little high on his own supply in terms of what he thinks he can be in an NBA offense. I don't really get some of the OG's strikes me as a guy who will eventually figure out that he should be Sean Marion, not
a super high-end role player.
Who's just outstanding at everything and really helps this is how a plan comes together through a guy like him. Because he's really good at lots of stuff. It's just he's not elite at anything, in my opinion.
No, it's a fantastic way to put it. And Portland needs one of those guys. They're still kind of hunting for that guy. They're kind of hoping Jeremy Grant will be that guy. But the Blazers, in all of this makeover, let's not forget Neil Olshey was fired December 3rd. Joe Cronin gets the interim tag. He finally gets the full tag. They bring in Sergey Oliva. They bring in Andre Patterson, and they bring in Mike Schmitz as their assistant GMs. Right.
Big deal. How many assistant GMs do they have?
3. They have 3. Those 3 guys.
So Mavs fans, let me explain something to you. Sometimes titles don't necessarily matter. But what the Blazers did, and what the Blazers did is they assembled something new because Neil Olshey, and I can say this, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Neil Olshey had kind of quietly and rather quickly become one of the more frustrating GMs to deal with in the league. Very, very much a believer that he was the smartest guy in the room. And I understand sometimes you need that at a professional level, but he seemed to be, we have a mutual friend, doesn't matter who it is, but he often said that Neil Olshey was pretty convinced that CJ McCollum was as good as Damian Lillard and was more interested in, and it's just as much as it's just being
more interested in being right in drafting CJ McCollum than
building the right team.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and Neil Olshey at the end of the playoffs last year, where Blazers were unceremoniously destroyed by a shorthanded Denver Nuggets team, said that their 27th rated defense was not a product of the roster. A roster made up of basically 6'2" to 6'4" guards.
Right. And Terry, what's Terry's last name?
Stotts.
Terry Stotts, longtime Mavs fans obviously remembered Stotts from the title run. Very important coach, very good coach.
Very good offensive coach.
And it's sometimes it's just a difficult situation. And the Blazers, much like the Mavericks, realized at the right time, and really I think that Neil Olshey sort of made his own bed with how he treated employees. You just need a hard reset. And what the Blazers have done from a front office perspective is bring in a lot of smart basketball people. Now on the Mavericks side, the comparison point that I would make is like how the Mavericks really reworked their coaching staff. I'm not really sure about the back end because I'm still the Mavericks don't have enough assets to work with to kind of make me like curious as far as what they're doing with the front office. But what the Blazers have done, because there's still a real, we're going to talk about this in a second, but like the outcome for the Blazers is varied. Like there's a lot of things that could go right, a lot of things that could go wrong. And sort of where the Blazers are at the moment, this is even before we talk about the draft, is ready for sort of a variety of outcomes. Like Mike Schmitz, if the name doesn't ring a bell, well, it should, guys, because he spent forever as probably the most prolific international scout in the league. Like the man knows his basketball. Yeah.
And then that was kind
stolen from ESPN.
Yeah. So obviously longtime Draft Express, ESPN. I mean, he was the guy who kind of innovated public scouting, and
he forced other teams to do better because he was lapping them. That's the thing.
And he's probably the most connected scout in the world.
Yeah,
quite literally. And what the Blazers did was at the Combine, Cronin kind of had his eye on Mike for a while, and they kind of hashed it out over that week, and kind of just convinced Mike of what they were doing in Portland. And why this is important and why it pertains to this draft is Mike is the person single most qualified to talk about Shaedon Sharpe because he is the only one who had seen him do anything for the past year.
So talk to me about Shaedon Sharpe. You selected him with the number 7 overall pick, and we didn't really hear much about him because he got hurt immediately in Summer League, which that happens. And now he's probably out. How long is he out for with the shoulder?
He's back working.
Okay. Is he going to be ready for opening day, or is it kind of like a mid-November?
No, he's good to go. He's back in practice. So where he got the tear was so small and in the front of the shoulder. When you worry about shoulder tears, it's in the back. If it's in the front and it's small enough, just time will actually allow it to heal. And they did, and he's back shooting. They released a video, I think last week before, of him back in the gym. I talked to people in the organization. They said he's doing great. But he's this enigma because he came out of Canada, blew up on the EYBL AAU circuits really late because of obviously COVID and his development himself. He was in kind of a weird place. He had the people around him weren't great, probably still aren't. But talent wise, he does stuff with a 6'5", 210 pound kid with the ability to create a shot. And this is going to sound like blasphemy, but I've seen it happen twice now, like with Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. He has shot creation platform abilities of an NBA superstar, a scoring type play. Now, I'm not saying he will be, but he does stuff that only superstars can do. And so Schmitz was like, no, this guy has juice. Now it's raw. There's plenty of things like you've questioned his defensive effort, his intensity, his ball handling. He's got to develop his left hand. Like he's super raw in that regard. But, they had him in training camp before they go down to Vegas. And I'm talking to all the other guys around and they're like, he does stuff that only dudes do. NBA players, when they talk glowingly about another guy, they don't go out of their way to do that. It's just not in their nature. And everybody in the gym was like, listen, I just kind of throw it up at the rim and he just does what God gave him the ability to do. And so that's kind of Cronin's MO right now. He's going to take big swings. They could have gone Dyson Daniels and got a guy who's kind of a connector, who's got, I think, a lesser Lonzo Ball. That's kind of how I look at Dyson, which I think the Blazers could use a guy like that. But Shaedon's the kind of guy where in 5 years, when Dame's 37 years old or he's out of the league, that he may be a dude.
No, it's a big swing thing, I think, more than anything else, because once you get out of the top 3 picks, and unless there's like a long, things can just go sideways if you and you kind of got to be honest about the state of your team. So with a guy like this, I'm kind of looking at the roster construction. I'm guessing that he will probably not get a ton of burn immediately.
It's going to be one of those things he's going to have to earn, number one, because who's in front of him? Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, and right now Nasir Little, if Shaedon's going to play some 3. Like guys who are, you can basically pencil in Dame and Ant for 34 minutes a night, Hart for probably 30.
I mean, Gary Payton
exists. Is probably going to get like 24, and Nas is probably 28 to 30. So if you're like trying to find time in that window is very difficult. But at the same time, I think Chauncey and Joe Cronin are both like, listen, if he shows something, we'll find a way to get him on the floor.
Sure. And if you don't need him, it's great. So then you can develop them in very specific ways, strength, conditioning, that sort of thing, whatever you can go towards. So then there's one more guy on the roster, and I need to bring him up because he was kind of a guy that the Mavericks fans very much wanted before they ended up trading the pick for Christian Wood. But there's the guy who my brain will never not read as Kamaligate, which is, not his name.
Kamagate, he ended up back he ended up in, I think, Denver. So the Blazers ended up moving that pick. So Portland had the 46th overall
46,
pick.
yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. So that they ended up moving that pick to Denver. So I'll just say this. The Blazers had a player that got taken the pick before who they were going to take, and that was Josh Minot. But it ended up working out. So they sent 46 out. They got another pick next year, a 2023
That's pretty good, then.
second round pick.
That's right. Okay, I remember this now.
They ended up getting Jabari Walker with the 57th overall pick, the second to last pick in the draft, and he may have been the second or third best player at Summer League this year.
That's right.
He was phenomenal. He had the highest rebound rate in Summer League, which everybody wants to laugh about Summer League stats. I look at rates because if you're doing something consistently and particularly rebounding, it translates.
Sure.
But talking to guys around the league, he put up very good numbers, but more than anything, the thing that everybody said was they've never seen a rookie play an NBA style role so well so early. Like he knows he's not going to be a star. His Jabari Walker is the son of Samaki Walker.
Yep.
So he's second generation. He understands stuff. 6'8", 6'9", great rebounder. I think he was second in the Pac-12 or first in the Pac-12 for rebounding, second or third in scoring. Like just a good player that just fell way too far, and the Blazers are trying to find a way to get him on the floor.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting over time because it feels like just kind of looking at the roster, and this plays into sort of what I wanted to pivot to because I don't want to keep you too long. Is what are expectations in Portland? Portland's a one. I mean, you guys have a soccer team, so that's not fair. But the basketball,
it's a one-team town. It is.
It's basketball's the core sport.
It's the lifeblood of the city. I'll be honest.
Yeah. And so with that, Blazers Edge, that's where you used to work, is one of the oldest sports blogs. I don't want to say in America, but that's basically the truth.
It's up there. It was 2006, I think it was founded.
So I think it might be earlier than that, man. Blazers Edge has been around forever, and it's
old.
Blazers fan. And I bring that up to note that it's a hardcore fan base, and as you have found out over the years, as our buddy Sean Hyken has found out, is it's an insane level of expectations that is quiet because there's not the volume compared to like Lakers fans. So
there's only 1 million people in the state of Oregon. Like it's
So what do you do? So what's kind of the expectation level versus what do you think reality is?
So ESPN projected 35 wins, which is comical. The Blazers ended up basically there last year when they lost 21 of 23. Like it's not. Without Damian Lillard, basically without their starting lineup. So the idea of 35 wins makes me laugh a little bit. And then I believe in another site, I believe the over-under was 41.5, I think is what it was. Either way, Damian Lillard by himself is basically worth 40 wins as an offense. I mean, when you're talking about an individual player as an offensive unit, you've got Luka, you've got Jokic, you've got Giannis, Braun, Steph, and Dame. Like those are the guys who right now I trust unequivocally to put up a high efficiency offense night in, night out by themselves as shot creators, as playmakers for others. Like that's the list. And when you look at that, it's pretty hard to see them falling short because here's the thing. They optimized their roster better than it was. And they've been open about it not being done, which that's a change in of itself. Your starting lineup is going to be Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Nasir Little, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic. Is that
not a lot of defense there?
Here's my pushback. And I get what you're saying. So regardless of my thoughts on Nurk because you can only really play one coverage with him because he's 7 foot 300 pounds.
Yep.
In the regular season, you can play drop. You can play drop every single night, change it up, be a little bit more aggressive. Jeremy Grant, very good to solid defender. Nasir Little is a good individual defender who they're trying to hope figures out stuff on the team side. Josh Hart, very good defender. Gary Payton II, Sam Esfandiari of light years called Gary the best point of attack defender in the entire NBA. I don't know if I agree with that, but I don't really argue with it. Like if you're talking,
he's pretty wild. He's pretty he can do some stuff. He's a fun X factor. I don't really know if I agree with that assessment, but he can definitely cause some chaos.
He's the best steals guy in the NBA, and that part of it's not even close. The stuff he does, he generated as many steals as any Trailblazer has in the last 10 years in 1,200 minutes.
Yeah,
like it's his steal per minute stuff is truly incredible. So they've added defense. They go out and they get, they draft Jabari Walker. They just try to fill in some spots to where like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense. It's better than it was. They're bigger, they're longer, they're stronger, they're more athletic. Because the Lillard McCollum teams over the past 5 years were some of the least athletic teams in the NBA, and it wasn't close. So they closed that gap a little bit. Are they still the Bucks where they're 6'5" to 7 foot everywhere up and down the roster and they're all athletic as hell? No. But number one, Anthony Simons is bigger, stronger, longer, more athletic than CJ McCollum. The hope is that he can at least be more impactful than CJ was on that end. The other side of this, and this is the difference between the Dame CJ backcourt and the Dame Anthony backcourt, because they have more offensive weapons, because they have more guys they can kind of trust, like having a guy like Jeremy Grant who is, well, not the most efficient guy in the league, can be a 20-point-a-game guy, which they haven't had since they had LaMarcus. It lightens the offensive burden on Damian Lillard enough to where he's not just a complete shit show. And here's the thing. During the playoffs, Damian Lillard has not been. It's been the regular season because his offensive, much like Luka, and here's the difference. Luka's 6'7" and maybe the strongest pound-for-pound guy in the league. Like that's the difference. They play the same defense. One's just bigger than hell and strong as an ox. So he can overcome some of that stuff by just being that dude. And so the Blazers have to be a little bit more inventive about how they cover that stuff up.
So, and I teased you about this. It's a thing that I feel as if there are a fair number of guys who view themselves as number one options. How does that conflict with the fact that Dame is the actual number one option?
I've been told the pecking order has been set. It has been communicated. Damian Lillard is number one. Anthony Simons number two. Everybody else kind of falls in line. Jeremy Grant.
That's wild. That's wild because shooting the roster. My roster disappeared.
Josh Hart's basically going to run the second unit.
Sure. Okay.
So like that's where he gets his touches. Jeremy Grant, as much as like you can't pay attention to there was a post on BR or something like that where Jeremy Grant's like, I'm not going anywhere unless I'm featured. He came to Portland knowing full well what the situation was.
Okay, and that's kind of my question because the noise. I'm just going to phrase it like this because I don't want to get in any trouble. The noise around Grant and the things that he has communicated publicly and then leaving Denver are like hackles raisingly weird. Like he feels like a mid-90s basketball player in some of the shit that comes out of his mouth because it's like, whoa, like all this stuff is usually PR washed. And he's like, nope, I'm the man. So that's kind of the real big one for me. And that was where my head was before when it felt like OG Anunoby might be going there. Cause it's like, man, this is a whole bunch of guys that have a lot of confidence in themselves. And I'm not necessarily a Dame believer, but there's Damian Lillard and then there's everybody else. Like this is just a math thing.
No, so Jeremy's kind of accepted the idea of being like the 15 to 19 guy. Like some nights it might be 15 points, some nights it might be 19.
Sure.
So from what I've been told, he's locked in on that. Yusuf Nurkic, part of keeping him happy was giving him that 4 years guaranteed and getting him that money. He's not going to get 12 post-ups a night. Like that's just not.
I wonder if the last 2 years for him, he's a clutch guy. He's by all accounts, like wildly, he believes in himself and for good reason, 100%. NBA player, but it's got to be a tough deal where at one point in time he shared a front court with a 2-time back-to-back MVP, and that guy basically pushed him out of a job.
Mhm.
And it's there's nothing like, for me, and I say this repeatedly, this is sort of my lot in life. I think it takes a lot of like professional sense to say, I'm going to play a role.
Mhm.
And in that role, I'm going to do the best that I can. And so it's interesting to me to where if he's hit that point in life where he's found the happy medium between the money and the role, then that's probably really good for his career, because, we've seen guys over the last, 30 years NBA basketball, frankly, just play themselves out of the league. Monte Ellis sort of did this as a Maverick, where it's just he thought he was one thing and he's something else. And it just, league can pass you by quick if you're not paying attention. And
Real quick.
bigs are just, there's a lot of them. I mean, you said you kind of were like surprised by his contract, and I was too, but at the same time, it also seemed like less than what he had been putting out into the void the previous year. So that's an interesting place. So, okay. So for you, 40 games, like barring injuries, barring nothing ridiculous, 40 games is a floor.
I really, barring anything going sideways, I picked them on the over. I think I landed at 43 wins in the season. And part of that has to do with everybody in the West is going to feast on the bottom. I don't think people realize just how bad those bottom 4 or 5 teams are going to be. Like, you're going to have teams in the West who win like 16, 17, 18 games.
Who do we think they are? The Jazz, obviously.
The Jazz, OKC's they're going to do it.
Yeah, I think they will too, even though a week ago I didn't think they were.
Even before that, I think they're going to trade Shea. I think they're going to trade him.
They should. I would. That's a guy I would go nuts for. Yeah, I would go nuts for Gilgeous Alexander. Yeah. He is such a good basketball player.
He's a downhill monster.
Toiling.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, he does stuff that you should not be able to do because he's both super athletic and not athletic at the same time. It doesn't make any sense.
We got Thunder. We got probably at this point, Jazz, Spurs.
Spurs, they are going to be galactic level tanking.
Yeah.
They have nobody left.
Houston probably by default, even though I think they're going to play hard.
And the Kings will find a way to suck.
Yeah, Kings are bad.
And what's going to end up happening is somebody in the West is going to have an injury right away and watch what Portland did last year and Golden State did 2 years ago and go, nope, not even going to screw with it.
Well, that's the dirty, we're 30 minutes into the show, so I can say this, and only the only people who listen to my show at this point are either people who know who I am and like me, people who know who I am, people who like our show and absolutely hate me and hate listen. And that's basically it. So I'll just say this out loud. Like the Mavericks are a Luka Doncic injury away from being a catastrophically bad team.
Oh God, yes. And if
that's
Luka
okay,
in like November,
fine.
Yeah, no, I mean that's honestly, you can say that a lot of teams in the NBA with their number one. I just think it leans more that way with Dallas. But at the same time, if let's say Luka, nothing devastating, but like it's going to be like a 4-month injury, that team they would deport everybody, and they would tank so hard for Wembanyama. I can't even fathom the level of suck, and that will happen with a contender in the West. A contender in the West will dive to the bottom.
And depending, this is just for the true sickos, and I think we would all love this, but I do think that the Lakers are sneaking.
They're on that list.
Cusp. Like 100%. They suck.
I could see them trying to get draft capital back by like, let's say Braun does something. They like screw it. They trade AD for like to get some of their capital back, and they just crash that thing into a cliff. Wouldn't surprise me in the least bit.
God, AD is just the most idea of a basketball player of anybody. Like, it's like he went from being under, like nobody knew, like the day to day was his nickname because he'd like fall down and go back. Like I feel bad because I was like the human, like the human body is just sometimes not meant to do this. Like Porzingis was definitely this way
on that list, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I've kept you for longer than I intended. Do you have any?
This is what I do, man.
smoking hot takes you want to get off, and any Euro ball, Euro, what do we call it? EuroBasket takes that anything you're interested in watching while you're over there. I did a show, which, guys, if you haven't heard this show yet, go listen to me and our one of our many Slovenian correspondents, Matej. That was on the feed. He and I talked about the Slovenian basketball team looking hungover and losing to Germany in a World Cup qualifier. But these games start on Wednesday, and there's
the real games, yeah.
And it's like the EuroBasket stuff.
It's
if you're
fun.
like,
it's a good
if
watch.
you're thirsting for ball, oh my God,
it's a good watch.
Be great.
The pace of play, like, listen, man, they got to get that stuff in the NBA. Like, there's so many rules that they've got to get in the NBA.
The stuff on the rim.
Yeah.
Honestly, it would fuck with the history books, but like the 40 minutes is wildly important, I think, because when you do a 48-minute game, you just basically increase the likelihood that the better team wins. And the thing I've always loved about basketball is that given enough time, given planning and a little bit of luck, the right team, or the worst team can win games in basketball. Like, that doesn't really happen in baseball. It's hard. It can happen in football a little bit. That's why everybody loves the variance there. I don't know. Anyways, I'm talking over you as I asked you a question.
No, like, for me, I'm with you. Like, I like the variance. Now you get it in single games. You don't get it in series, which maybe if you add 40, you switch to 40 minutes, maybe that variance plays out and makes a series go sideways. I'd be interested in it. But as far as takes go, nah, man, for me, I sat on and watched the Neil Olshey era for basically a decade, and I wanted to tear my eyes out because the guy refused to trade C.J. McCollum when he had opportunities to trade for Jimmy Butler, when he had opportunities to trade for Paul George. He kept him off the table. There was one time that C.J. McCollum was ever made available in another trade, and it was for James Harden. And even then, there was I don't know about it. And the fact that the Blazers got away from that this year, it's going to be hard to screw with me. Like, it just really, unless things like completely crash, and even then, maybe it's enough where they just wholesale change everything. They took a risk for the first time in basically a decade. And now, for the first time in a long time, I'm just interested to see what kind of happens and what plays out, because the storyline was so tired and so washed that it's like, by God, thank you. Thank you for changing something enough to where it mattered.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this. Well, Dan, take up too much of your Monday. I hope you come back. Man, I'm going to try to do more.
I got a wife and puppies, man. I got all the time. I ain't got no kids.
Look, man, puppies are a pain in the ass. I love my dogs, okay? But
they're passed out in the other room right now.
No, they're not. They wrestle. What happens? They have like 2 bouts during the day. One's like from 10 to noon, and then the older boy dog, he was fixed super early, but he still gets like all humpy, and I'm like, dude, stop it. And then I'll go to like break him up, and the small dog is like wet from drool. Like, this is gross. And then it happens again at night, only I can't see. And so it's I love these dogs.
All you hear is sounds. There you go.
I hope you come back during the season. We'll try to make it work out. And I hope
I'm going to drag you onto my show.
That's what I hope. I want the people of Portland need to hear about me. Do you hear?
Yes.
What is it? Never mind. I was about to make a very bad joke. We'll talk.
Support those here.
We'll talk soon, guys. You should. I'm gonna post Dan's all his stuff in the feed. Go follow him on Twitter. He's fun. He's one of, Blazers have a lot of specific media, but I only choose the best people to be on this show.
There you go.
And that includes Dan. So this has been Kirk Henderson and Dan Marang on Kirk Your Enthusiasm. I hope you have a good week, and we'll talk soon.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.